So how can you sit there with heavy conviction, take size, and bet that it's going to go down? You can't. What's happening, guys? We're getting another video scan coming at you, this time for Easter. Happy Easter to everybody that celebrates it. Hopefully it's a little bit faster. I got to compete with the kids in the playroom behind me, but we'll see how that goes. First and foremost, Yogan Acharya. Acharya? I think that's right. You've got the t-shirt, webmaster at investorsunderground.com. Email me, we'll ship it out. Video topics. First and foremost, I'm feeling better. Last week was a pain. Every morning I felt like I was in a cloud when I was doing the broadcast, and just getting my thoughts together, it was definitely a little bit more difficult last week. That said, got on an antibiotic at the end of last week and started to take a bounce, but tired of these 2-3 week type sicknesses. It shouldn't be happening. So hopefully that's the last one, and maybe start taking zinc and vitamin D and all kinds of stuff just to be at least preventative. We'll see. Phil Goedeker. We put out Phil's interview on Friday, and it took off like crazy. So YouTube usually says, hey, this one's, doing X. And this was one that took off pretty well, which means that people were engaged, that people were watching it all the way through. So it's obvious that there is that people are enjoying it. So point is, check it out. And there's a good chance that you're going to end up watching the entire thing. And I've got that link in the description as well, in the blog post. IFRX. So we talked about this sort of general concept with a bunch of different names last week, with the dip and the rip candles, and when to be hands off. Now IFRX, you saw me get hands off. You saw me warn twice at 550 when there was a bunch of flipping and stuff that, kind of gives you a little bit of pause, like, hey, what's going on here? A lot of times people ask me, what's your full size on this? Or when's your, at what point do you have heavy conviction? And in my opinion, quite honestly, in small cap land, I don't think there's a such thing anymore as a high conviction type trade. Just because there's just so many factors now that go into it. It's so crowded one way or the other. Everybody has all the information at their fingertips right away. Right before, going back 2 or 3 years, there's an edge. There's an edge because if you knew filings, if you knew how to search for certain keywords and understand where they were in a cash position, you could make a general assumption that they were either going to need to offer, they were going to need to tap their ATM, they potentially would, knock out their warrants, whatever the case may be. But now that's all at your fingertips because there are services and there's data out there that just kind of puts it in your lap, which is totally fine. I'm happy about that. But it took away the edge for the folks that are purely data driven. And if you go with that same thought process and with that same conviction, you're getting smoked. You're getting smoked over the last year or two, right? The heaviest conviction type setups that are the most obvious create the most crowded setups. And you have to understand that. Otherwise, you're just getting chop, 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 chop. So when things are not making new lows, like we talk about, by 10 or 11 a.m., hands off. Or when things start going crazy, you start to see huge offers and the bids soak, and then you see 60K bid here gets smashed, and then the 60K offer gets taken, and it's just like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What's going on? You don't know. So how can you sit there with heavy conviction, take size, and bet that it's going to go down? You can't. And on top of that, you develop the key levels, right? So we focused on IFRX on that 550 level. And just because it snaps under 550 does not mean that it broke down. It does not mean that it has failed follow through. It does not mean that it is confirmed. You always pause. Just like CDLX was another one the day before. Broke through a key level and almost went into a circuit halt the way back up before it came right back down. If you were to react as soon as it breaks that level, you get smoked. Same thing, IFRX breaks 550, guess what? Dip, flushes, rip right back through, right? So within 30 to 60 seconds, you know that that is not confirmed. But yet, you still sit there and you wait because you want to see what it does. You want to be right. They had warrants, they had this, they had that. They need to raise, they need money, right? And you ignore the fact that, hey, what is going on here? We don't know. That takes away your edge. So you can't have high conviction. It's not high probability until the emotions pass. And so that's exactly what we talked about anyway on IFRX. And both times that it trapped at 850 I specifically stated, be cautious if you did not cover on the flush. That was a dip and rip candle. So when that dip and rip candle comes, right, the only way to then get bearish conviction again is if there's an exhaustion move and it fails, or there's failed follow through. But as soon as that dip and rip candle comes, everything that happened before is now voided, right? Just like if there was a stuff move and it slams right back into the prior support, right? And they soak everything. That stuff move no longer matters. Back in the day, stuff move, done. It's over. Now, stuff move, you don't know until the next move. You have to wait to see what it does. Otherwise, you slam in, it holds, guess what? Could be going circuit. That's exactly what happened with IFRX. And after that dip and rip candle, you actually had a lot of time to review, think about, all right, am I overstaying? What's it going to do? And then, bam, goes to, $7 before it starts to come back in. So the good part about that is, the next day I feel like a lot of people were afraid to short it because maybe they got too aggressive the day before. So it gave a very clean entry, as you saw on Friday, shorting it right out of the gate and into the ramps versus the prior levels of support, which in my opinion became the resistance, good enough for the first entry and then scale in from there. But again, not high conviction, not, you can't be aggressive in small cap land on the names that are outlier in range and volume and activity. If that makes sense. So just be cautious when you see that. Outlier volume, blocks being tossed back and forth. You need to avoid high conviction. So the answer to the person that asked me, about how do I get such high conviction and how do I do this and how do I do that? You don't. And I've completely changed what I do in small caps just because, and I was actually talking to Eric Wood on Friday. We connected again, like we always do, but he's like, and he's off to one of his best starts of any year. But he's like, ignoring stuff under 3 million float or 5 million float or whatever, he's like, has been a complete game changer because, he's the kind of person that will put on size and, if it's something like AMC or BBVY or AI or whatever, like there's enough liquidity to get in, get out, or, if he needs to, scale into the position when and if he desires. With small caps, if you're trading as aggressively, well, what if you swipe into a circuit? What if you do this? What if you do that? You don't have many options. So just by eliminating that, it's taken away all, knock on wood, most of the headaches of the year. So it's just something to think about. And it also kind of aligns with, something like Phil, where it's just like, why bother with these names that, can have those outlier risk factors? Yeah, sure, it probably works most times, but it's that one time that takes you out, and then that's that. That's your career. Not everybody has all these bullets to keep on, throwing at an account to give themselves another shot. So anyway, I think that's good for this week. Again, it's Easter. I know you guys probably are in a food coma right now. This is pre-food coma. Everybody's coming over around, I think, noon today. So But as usual, this will be out at 6 p.m. So, like I said, you probably have your food coma and watching this, so it won't be long, and we'll get right into the main watches for the week ahead. All right, guys, so for the second part of Scan, as always, I'm not a financial advisor. These are not buy or sell recommendations, and this is for educational and informational purposes only. If you're not okay with that, shut the video off. If you're good with that, you're in the right spot. I want to go over ideas, concepts, thoughts, what creates edge, what doesn't, what to watch out for, traps, things like that. And if that sounds good to you, you're in the right spot. So, also, I posted a tweet this weekend, especially if you are in IU. I would definitely like your opinion, but also it's open to everybody. Just as far as what is the most important sort of either data point or benefit, or not benefit, but what is the most important thing or tool that you use in trading? Most, I would say even members probably haven't ventured around. You know, you get used to using the room in a certain manner, and then you don't really venture around and click. But we have brand new high day list, low day list, and Max has, for those of you guys that have seen the tape burst, it's very similar concept with the high day list. And then when it starts to go crazy on the high day or the low day, and there's just this influx of orders, it'll light up in the bottom and it'll verbally say the ticker. And I've been pulling a lot of great trades, or at least good watches, right off of that list. So that's huge. We've got the pre-market scanner, midday market, after-hour scanner, and also you can now sift through by sectors. So sectors or themes, basically like a tag. And so when you want to see all the Bitcoin names, you can click the Bitcoin symbol and see them all in a real-time environment. Same deal with just about every other sector. So keep that in mind, and if you haven't checked it out yet, please do. It's really neat. And Max has done a phenomenal job. Most of it is his ideas, quite honestly. I told him what I'd like my wish list, and then he just always takes it and then makes it 10 times better. So it's really good to have, his brain going. So he's looking at my scans and what I typically do, and then he's like, how can I make this the same? And then how do I make it 10 times better? And that's exactly what he's done. So let's get right into it. Main watches, GCTK. I think that this one's got actually a little bit of a lesson attached to it as well. We went over this in the room, so clearly, you had this morning shove, and then it comes back, and then it ramps again, and it comes back. And they basically showed no desire to really fight, right? So if you were short, maybe you cover in a panic, but overall, you feel pretty confident because it ramped up again, and nobody's home. It ramps up and then just kind of trickles off. So to anybody that was fading it, it's like, yeah, those idiots, they covered into the ramp. I'm gonna hold. This is no brainer fade. Then all of a sudden, after hours, it starts to go right. So they ramp it up, and you can kind of see the wicks getting soaked up. They get into sort of a sideways formation here, with a base right at the 170, 180 level. And then they ramp everybody out, right? And you can see the volume associated. They let it walk down, couple stuffs, and then they reclaim that same level that was the base, right? So this is almost the same concept as a VWAP, sub VWAP trap. And so basically, picture the VWAP right here, goes back under it, flushes out, dip and rip candle, and then comes back. And if you can't see that, you can zoom in. You can see, the dip and rip, then comes right back. Dip and rip, comes right back. And in my opinion, and this is what I had written in the room, I feel like they trapped somebody big right here, right? And you can kind of assume that with the volume. If you go back and look, you had massive volume right here compared to the other ones. You had basically 1 million shares almost in those 4 minutes. And so that's enough after hours if there's a player in there to make you pay up. If they know hey, that's weird. There was just 1 million shares that kind of went off in the last 4 minutes, but there's probably not that many sellers around. It's probably all shorts. So if somebody's got enough, dough, they can start going bidding up until the panic comes, and then you've got this basically exhaustion move, and you can see the seller refresh. And we talked about that. This is your standard failed follow through setup, right? So you've got this exhaustion move over here, which, I'm not going to pretend that I would have shorted there and it was easy. But what do you look for? You look for sort of this base, and then you look for a failed follow through. So you've got this exhaustion move, failed follow through setup, comes down. Still, you don't know yet, because what if it ramps right back up? So now you want it to come back up and exhaust out. And from that point forward, started to fail off. And my thought was that basically they trapped here, they blew out here, and then they walked. And obviously the $2 mark was sort of a key, $1.95, $2 or so. Once that busted, it came back in. And that's exactly what we talked about on Friday. I said, I'm thinking it floats back to 180 to 160s, and it went right to those levels. And the reason for that is because it was after everybody kind of came in, got trapped, got squeezed out. Why are they going to hold it over a long weekend? They blew out. They're done. They moved on. So moving forward to the week ahead and how I would trade that, you just don't know. Sometimes that's it. It's over. But if they know that they can easily control this thing, then come Monday morning, if this thing's ramping up and it's fading into 7 and ramps back up, you want to be cautious, because everything prior to 7 a.m. is typically non-retail account, like not non-retail, but non-mom and pop, right? Non-E-Trades and TDs and Schwabs and all that. It's more of the sophisticated professional style traders, which are probably on the short side, right? So 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., if it's not holding weakness, staying heavy after 7 a.m., then that's when all the mom and pops are open. And so you want to be cautious, because it could have walked down. It's all short. 7 a.m. comes, it firms up, starts to go the other way. Be aware of that. But otherwise, if I were to make a guess, I feel like they walked. If they re-trap, though, that doesn't matter. So from this point, I'd be looking pops versus the 2 level for an unwind. If at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., looks like it's very trappy and it should have died, maybe it does dip and a rip, and it starts to firm, then throw that idea away and start thinking about potential rebound. Because this is one of those where it could be a very manipulated multi-day type of move if it wants to. All right, so other than that, we've got FOA. FOA was a nice, had a little bit of a rip there pre-market, and then it did another big rip right off the open, and one more. So I started in, and I didn't cover any here, so I went for a little bit of a ride, re-added and added, and basically, probably made like a dime. But there wasn't really any high conviction or any reason to scale on it. I only had the starter. I added a little bit once it came back under VWAP, and then it just didn't unwind enough. So if I was to get prepared for the week ahead, I'd like to see a blow off towards this, sort of not 192 level, blow out over here over the VWAP, and then start to fade off from there as a full day kind of unwinder. If it starts to consolidate 170, 180 the next couple days, then I want to be super, super cautious that this could, keep on going. So again, idea is it blows out too and then fades off and stays heavy. The moment that it starts to firm up and base and consolidate, that voids the idea. Same thing with AI. As we discussed a little bit earlier, I think that this was a fantastic trade. Identified the proper levels. We knew that we had some 2350 was a big spot over here, and basically everything over it, I felt like it was exhausting out, came back in, and then now you can see that the 2350s becomes the top, and the goal was basically for a fade back to exactly 2260 to 2230s was the two levels that I gave. And you can see why I came up with those numbers early on in the day. And so that was the goal, is once this level started to fail to follow through, you can see that setup. The thought process was it would go back, revert back to this range right over here, and you can see it went to the top end. So I would be using that same level. And again, I'm showing you this. This is how I draw my levels. I look for those spots where it kind of gravitates towards. But these are all levels given ahead of time. This is not drawing lines after the fact. This is stuff given during the market, real time. I post these charts in real time in the lounge so that traders can see. Sometimes they'll start in ahead of time. And that is my starter. It allows me to start to zone in and focus and get that kind of read. And that, I repeat myself every Sunday, but that has to be understood. Sometimes I'm going to start in and then I wait for it to unfold. And I get tunnel vision on these trades that I have just a little bit of skin in the game on. And then as the trade progresses, I either, it either never comes back and never sets up, so I just take the loss on that starter, or I scale into the trade as the trade comes. And if you remember, AI on the long side, the loss that I took before I flipped to the short side, I never had it because there was never a high or low. There was never a reason to scale into the trade. That's the difference between a real starter and somebody that just calls it a starter, and then it's the start of a very bad idea. Next up, failed follow through, IFRX. Like to see how this trades out. One thing, if you go back to the earlier conversation, we were talking about 550s. And so 550s I talked about in depth, and that was sort of the start of a lot of this trap and a lot of this action. And you saw that over here. There was a lot of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you literally had like 20 minutes of this, what's going on here? And all they're doing is just trying to bait people into making a poor decision. That's all that is how do we bait enough people into a bad decision that we can then make them pay for it? That's literally all that happened. And so let's see how long you had, right? So you had this nice ramp stuff, then it consolidates. You had this flush, basically a dip and rip candle, dips, comes right back. And you start to see that it's basically going like this at 550, right? So we know that's a key level. So you finally have this nice little fail, flush. Everybody's like, yes, it's over, it's done. Comes right back up, 550. So then you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for quite some time. Hey, are you oversized? And if you are, that you had time, right? But that's the problem, is you look at this and you're like, man, it was just 540. And now it's 560, 580. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until it goes to 540 again, because I was up nice. $7, right? So there is no time for emotion. There's no time to see what it does. When that dip and rip candle comes, if you are oversized, that's your sign. And until you have a stuff move and it fails to follow through, or you have an exhaustion move, there is no edge. So again, the signs were there, and that's why I pointed it out. And then once again, what do you have? The same move again. 550 starts to consolidate, looks a little different. Stuff candle, right? Obvious stuff candle. Flushes, comes back, dip and rip. Holds trend, and it's right back over that VWAP level, and then does the same move twice. So not only did you see it earlier in the day, you saw it an hour later. So if you fell for it twice, then that's a problem. And then later on in the day, you can obviously use, looking left techniques, and you can see that, some nice failed follow through action, more failed follow through, and so on and so forth. So again, 550s is the key level, and I would say, if you throw in the action from Friday, obviously basically 530s range is the same thing as well. And this is another, something that I look for where, when it flushes, it comes back. Sometimes you get that second chance. And if you don't size down in this time, then, that's on you, because, we have that information. We know that, that was the prior base. So I always like to be a little bit proactive in this market because, as I said, it's very hard in small cap land to really let a trade play out for a while these days. GFAI was an okay one. On Friday, it was, I basically risked $1 to make 50 cents and never got a chance to really scale. So I had put some on, in this range over here. I put some on over here, and I added some right over here. But, overall, I don't remember. I think it was like a 14.20 average or something, and I covered 13.50. But not really worth it. So we'll see what happens. But nice rally, and thinking back, this GFAI. It kind of makes sense that I should have been prepared for GFAI, SOUN, and BBAI, right? When AI finally does that bounce, then obviously they're all going to go with the sympathies. So just kind of thinking for next time what I could have done better. That said, GFAI, watch with AI. If AI starts to fade, this one likely will too. But I'd be watching for some sort of VWAP exhaustion, 1380s. Blow off and then failed follow through. Then we got MSGN. This was a nice late day ripper. And again, this is one of those that's super, super crowded, and the exact same thing that I was talking about, where just because it cracks and hits that level does not mean that that it's over. And this is a perfect example where the level that I gave in the room to see failed follow through was 790s, right? So you see all this action over here, which yes, is somebody obviously selling, but is it a seller or is it a short? And so if you want to convince a short to hammer in and make more bad ideas, you let it break, but you hold that level. And the 790s was the key that I wanted to see confirm. We dipped under it, came right back. First chance, reclaimed right away. So therefore it's not confirmed. So we had the blowout move. So basically everybody that got positioned here and confident here got blown out right here. You're seeing this concept over and over again, right? On IFRX, on this one, on whatever the other one I just went, GFAI, all these different names. Very, very similar concept. And basically the not the secret, but the way in which to stay in that trade, the way in which to prepare for that trade is to position yourself accordingly. And if you're going full size, heavy conviction, you're probably going to get chopped up. So the goal is just to start in with your idea and wait for confirmation that you're right. That way, if you're wrong and it blows you out, one, you're not emotionally attached, or two, it's just on a starter position. It's not really a big deal. So just be cautious of that. But morning shove ideally pushes towards that 790s level or VWAP. VWAP being this yellow line here. So basically 770s, 790s, exhaust out, fail is the goal on that one. Next up is the continuation section. ELOX, and I don't know why it doesn't have yesterday's move, but you can see it on here. ELOX went up to 7 after hours, which was cool. But ELOX was the latest swing idea. This one started to firm up on it hit scan number 1, but then I looked at the daily chart, and it's a nice liquidity trap. And so liquidity trap, as we know, is this huge volume day, comes back, holds a decent amount of support, but the volume is typically like 10% of what it was the prior day, and then after that it's 10% of the other day. If it starts going up and holding trend, that means all those folks that positioned aggressively based on the volume the prior couple days no longer can get out because there's no volume. So then we had that slow, steady kind of squeeze out. So anyway, up about $2 a share on this. We'll see what happens. I'm not looking to marry this thing. I'm looking to trade it, sell some, and let the rest work. But one thing, and again, this chart was not working perfectly, but one thing that we've been talking about a lot, you can see that there's a ramp up, next day ramps up, sells back all the way down. Then the next day it goes. That's been a trend that I've been seeing where they're not in a big rush to get these trades moving. They ramp them, let them die off, and ramp them again. And you see that on CDLX, right over here. Big day where they position. Next day, let it kind of just chill out and fade. And if you notice, what's the low? 433, 461, 470. So each day, they're holding a higher low and a higher low. Those are the wicks that we talk about. That's the stuff that I want you guys to notice on your own. Like, what could I have seen that could have maybe turned me on to this trade on the long side for a potential squeeze? Same deal with SECO. You've got this huge day, transitional day I usually call it, where there's new blood that comes in, shorts that come in, shorts win, all of a sudden you're right back up. And shorts are like, whoa, wasn't expecting this. So that's something to kind of take into consideration because we're starting to see it more and more and more. Meaning, you might have this high conviction trade, and it's going, and then it just dies into the close. That doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. Focus on it the next day, and it might prove your thesis true. And that's it. That's what I've been prepared for. There's lots of other great stuff. You know, there's NVAX. I have a bunch on staying familiar, of course, so make sure you check that out. You can click the blog post. You know, some of the other ones I'm watching, NAAS, which has been going straight up, and I don't know why the daily's not working. BHAT, and again, yeah, I guess I probably got logged out on my other computer. But either way, there's other ones to kind of watch there. There's you know, some that are being walked up on hardly any volume to be aware of. And just things to stay familiar. And if there's something that kind of fits your personality, all you got to do is set a price alert. Then you'll be alerted when it's time. So anyway, I hope everybody has a happy Easter. I hope to see you guys in the room on Monday. And make sure you check out that Phil interview that we did. He's always a fan favorite, Traders for Cause. And, you know, his speeches always, and interviews always resonate with a lot of folks. So, check that out. And again, Traders for Cause, poker tournament, New York City, April 20th, 6 p.m. I'll be there. A bunch of people will be there. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. Have a good weekend.